The train slowed as it approached the camp. Inside the crowded cattle car, there was no real sense of time anymore, only the weight of bodies, the stale air, and the quiet realization that whatever came next, life would not look the same. Among the passengers was a young psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl. He had spent years studying the human mind, thinking about purpose, motivation, what drives people forward. At one point, he had even begun writing a manuscript about these ideas. When he arrived, that manuscript was taken from him, along with nearly everything else: clothes, possessions, identity. What remained was something much harder to define. In the days and weeks that followed, Frankl began to notice something. Not everyone responded the same way to the conditions around them. Some people gave up quickly. Others, despite the same suffering, found ways to endure. They held on to something, a memory, a person, a future they still believed in. And Frankl began to ask a different kind of question. How do we avoid suffering? What makes suffering survivable? Years later, reflecting on that time, he would write that even when everything is taken from a person, one thing remains: the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That idea would become the foundation of what he called logotherapy. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to find meaning, especially when it's not obvious, and why Viktor Frankl believed that meaning isn't just helpful for mental health. It may be essential to it. And welcome to the Licensure Lifeline Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Lawson, and this is where you get information that can really help you with studying for tests, getting your practice going, or just staying up to date on therapy. Because this isn't just about passing tests, it's about becoming a clinician. Today, we're going to be talking about Viktor Frankl and logotherapy. This is one of those topics that feels a little different than what we usually cover, because we're not just talking about symptoms, techniques, or even behavior change. We're talking about meaning, what drives people forward, what keeps them going, and what happens when that meaning is missing. And if you think about it, this shows up everywhere in clinical work. That's one of the things I really like about logotherapy. Very similar to like person-centered therapy. It's not just a modality that you're using. It's kind of a way of being within that moment with somebody that you're working with. And like I was saying, this shows up everywhere in clinical work. Clients who feel stuck, clients who feel lost, clients who say things like, I don't even know what I'm working toward anymore. That's not just a behavioral problem, it's an existential one. In this episode, we're going to talk about who Viktor Frankl was and how his experiences shaped logotherapy, some of the key concepts like the existential vacuum and freedom of attitude, and how this shows up both on the licensure exams and in clinical work. Also, just a quick heads up here, I will be launching the long-awaited Licensure Lifeline Circle online group in the next week or two. This is something I'm very excited about. This is going to give you another place to go to help you focus your studying. You're along with having access to all the podcasts there, you're going to have just a growing body of different pieces of content, like access to newsletters, access to videos, short videos on different topics that I'm going over each week. I'll even have some live interviews, live kind of like town hall meetings with people in the field, people that are other individuals helping people study for test. I'm also going to host, I'm trying to decide either a bi-weekly or a weekly study hall, where basically I'll take an hour each week and just go live and give people an opportunity to come in and ask questions and just talk and feel some community. It can be a very lonely process studying for these tests at times, and I'm really hoping to give people a place to go that will really help them hone and focus their studying habits. So look forward to that. You'll have more details probably in the next podcast on what you need to do to get signed up for that. If you do have any questions right now and you're interested in this, please reach out to me on the Instagram group. That's the best place to actually get me to respond to you, and I can give you links and things like that. I'll also have a link in the show notes for the newsletter that's out. I am getting ready to publish the third newsletter. Pretty successful so far. I'm pretty excited about this. I've got some really good responses. Again, it's just another piece to add to your studying arsenal for that. So I'm excited to get into Viktor Frankl today. Before we get things going though, let's look at the news. One of the biggest shifts happening right now is the rapid integration of AI into mental health care. And a recent report from the American Psychological Association highlighted that a growing number of clinicians are either already using or actively exploring AI tools in their practice, particularly for those things like documentation, treatment planning, and between session engagement. So at the same time, there's also a lot of caution here. Concerns around privacy, ethical issues, and over-reliance on technology are still very much front and center. There's also an ongoing conversation about where AI should support the therapeutic process and where it absolutely should not replace it. What's interesting here is the tension. On the one hand, these tools can reduce burnout, administrative burnout, things like that. On the other hand, there is a real question about what makes therapy. And as a future clinician, this is something that you're going to be navigating in real time, not just reading about it. And I just cannot advocate enough for getting ahead of this. I don't necessarily think that, again, that, machines are going to replace us as therapists. I do see a lot of room for collaboration and using AI tools to really support the therapeutic process. But we need voices, we need people that are integrating this stuff and really learning it and understanding how it can work. I've said this before in other episodes, when technology has come up, oftentimes our profession kind of puts their heads in the sand. It took the pandemic to really get the adoption of video chat and video therapy as something that is a pretty regular thing. Before that, it was something that was really rallied against. So, this is one of those things that I really think is important for us to not shy away from, but to really meet it head on, not just for ourselves, but for the people that we're going to be working with and the different issues that this is going to cause in the society that has this emerging technology coming right now. So take a look. Next story, burnout and meaning in the mental health profession. Another really big topic getting attention right now is burnout among mental health professionals. I don't know if you've noticed, but the state of the world is a little crazy. And a recent survey published by the National Alliance on Mental Health found that a significant percentage of clinicians report high levels of emotional exhaustion, with many citing workload, administrative demands, and a lack of support as primary contributors. But what stood out wasn't just the burnout. It was the reason people stay. Many clinicians reported that despite the stress, they continue in the field because of a strong sense of purpose and meaning in their work. And that connects directly to what we're talking about today, because when meaning is present, even in difficult conditions, people can sustain. And, this is something that I see a lot from the people I work with. I know this is a big part of myself. I have had feast and famines in the therapy world. I've seen the worst when it comes to like things like pay and benefits and things like that. And I've also seen some of the best. It's kind of sad, but a lot of institutions take advantage of just how fulfilling this work is and how much the people that are in this profession really want to give to other people, and they don't pay them what they deserve. And again, this is another place of advocacy for ourselves as professionals, as clinicians, to make sure that it's not that beyond being paid what we should be, understanding what it means to work a full day. An 8-hour day for a therapist, seeing 8 people, is not the same as an 8-hour day working in an office on spreadsheets. And organizations that see that as, what you're supposed to do don't quite get it. And it's important to steer clear of those places, and look for the places that really know how to treat clinicians. Okay, enough of that soapbox. Let's move on. Before we get into the main topic, I want to take a minute to talk about something that is going to matter a lot as you move from studying into actually seeing clients. Because at some point, this all becomes real. You're not just learning theories, you're sitting across from someone trying to be present, focused, and helpful in that moment. And the reality is, the more mental energy you're spending on documentation, scheduling, and keeping things organized, the less you have available for the work itself. And that's where Simple Practice comes in. Simple Practice is an all-in-one platform designed specifically for therapists. It helps you manage scheduling, documentation, telehealth, billing, everything you need to run a practice without getting overwhelmed by the back end. And right now, they're offering a 7-day free trial plus 50% off your first 4 months. They're also offering a 30-day free trial of their AI note taker, which can help streamline your documentation so you can stay focused on your client instead of your notes. This is something that is HIPAA compliant. This is something I've used in the past. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you're even thinking about seeing clients in the near future, it's worth checking this out. See what the free trial has to offer. I will have links in the show notes. Take a look. Let's step into logotherapy. And this is one of those theories that feels a little different because most of what you've studied up to this point focuses on reducing symptoms, changing behavior, restructuring thoughts. Frankl starts somewhere else. He asks, what makes life worth continuing even when it's difficult? Viktor Frankl was a neurologist and psychiatrist and the founder of logotherapy. His work was shaped in a way that very few psychological theories are, through direct lived experiences. During World War II, Frankl was imprisoned in multiple concentration camps, including Auschwitz. While there, he lost nearly everything: his family, his work, even a manuscript he had developed. And yet, he observed something that would become the foundation of his theory. People in the same conditions did not respond the same way. Some gave up, others endured. And the difference, as he saw it, wasn't physical strength, it was meaning. Frankl proposed that the primary human drive is not pleasure, like Freud suggests, or power, like Adler posited. It is meaning. This is called the will to meaning. The idea that human beings are fundamentally motivated by a need to find purpose and significance in their lives. In the last episode about motivational interviewing, we talked about ambivalence, clients stuck between two choices. Frankl adds another layer. Sometimes the issue isn't indecision, it's emptiness, the existential vacuum. Frankl used the term existential vacuum to describe a state of lack of purpose, boredom, emptiness, feeling of directionlessness. You'll hear this clinically as, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, or nothing really matters, or I just feel stuck. And this shows up a lot more than people expect. This is something you absolutely want to remember for the exam. Frankl believed meaning can be found in 3 primary ways. 1, through work or creation that we give to the world. So things like our career, our creative efforts, hobbies, other contributions. Secondly, through love or relationships, what we receive from others, connection, those really significant relationships that we have with family, friends, coworkers, experiencing others deeply. Through attitude towards suffering, how we respond when things get tough, when suffering is unavoidable. This third one is what makes logotherapy unique. When we can't change the situation, we can still choose how we respond to it. That's something that's you see echoed from so many clinicians moving forward. Like you see this in CBT, REBT, all the BTs, a lot of the behavior therapies, right? This idea that we can choose to believe certain things, believe certain path. Frankl believed that even when everything external is taken away, the one thing that remains is our ability to choose one's attitude. This doesn't mean suffering is good. It means suffering can still have meaning. So let's get into some techniques here. There's basically two key techniques you'll see on the exam. Paradoxical intention, encouraging the client to intentionally engage or exaggerate the feared behavior. So an example might be a client with insomnia is told to try to stay awake. If you've ever tried to do that, if you're struggling with sleep at night, shoot your eyes wide open and try to keep them open. You can still blink, but just try to keep your eyes open. It's really interesting what happens if you've never done it before. But the reason that this technique works is it reduces anxiety. Again, like I don't know if you've ever done that with sleep where you're like, come on, you got to fall asleep. You got to fall asleep. And the anxiety from trying to make yourself fall asleep actually keeps you awake. But it also helps to break the cycle of fear. Dereflection, shifting focus away from the self or the problem. This is the second technique, dereflection. That's DEREFLECTION. An example here would be a client is overly focused on performance. And so you encourage them to shift attention outward. So this works because it reduces self-monitoring and increases engagement in the here and now and in the life. So how you might see this clinically, you might see logotherapy concepts when clients are burned out. This is a great place to use logotherapy, or somebody's feeling lost, questioning their purpose, struggling after a major life transition, breakups, loss of jobs, dealing with suffering that can't be changed, grief. I've seen logotherapy used in so many different ways. It's applicable across so many places where people just feel lost. And this is less about fixing behavior and more about helping people reconnect with why their life matters, why they want to move things forward. So this is basically logotherapy in a nutshell. The test is going to focus around things like identifying meaning-based interventions, recognizing existential themes, and really being able to differentiate this from CBT and REBT and DBT, but really being able to focus more on meaning and explore purpose. So I'm going to try something a little new with this next section. I'm calling it a dialogue section. And what we're going to do here is look at what logotherapy sounds like in a room working with somebody. So let's take a look at this theory for a second. Listen to what this actually sounds like in a session, because logotherapy doesn't always look like a technique. It often sounds like a different kind of conversation. So let's say you're working with a client who comes in feeling stuck. They're not in a crisis, they're not highly symptomatic, but something feels off. The client might say, I don't know, I just feel like I'm going through the motions in life. Work is fine, life is fine, I just don't really feel anything about anything anymore. This is important. This is not necessarily depression. This is what Frankl would call the existential vacuum. So the therapist in this case might do something like, discuss this with the individual and identify some of the goals that they've had for themselves in general in life, or other things that they can work toward, like trying to explore and discover with this individual, what gives them meaning. The client might say, yeah, I've tried that. I've tried to find meaning. I've tried to pick up some hobbies. I've tried to identify some things that can give me some goals, but nothing really sticks. So notice what's happening here. We're trying to create direction without addressing meaning first. So the therapist might go back to, when you say you're going through the motions, what feels most empty about that? The client might say, I guess I just feel like none of it really matters. That word matters. That's your entry point, right? So the therapist would go into potentially, has there been a time in your life where things did feel meaningful? And the client might respond, yeah, when my kids were young. I felt the most present. They gave me meaning. I liked that role. Now we're somewhere different, right? We're not solving a problem. Kind of like that was at the beginning, where we're trying to like find goals or hobbies for the individual. We're not trying to solve the problem here. We're uncovering meaning for this person. This guy found meaning in being a parent, in parenting his children. So further exploration here from the therapist might be, what was it about that time that felt meaningful to you? And the client would say, I felt needed. I felt wanted. My kids depended on me. Like I was showing up for something important each day. Now the client is doing something critical. They're defining meaning in their own words, right? We didn't give them their verbiage around this. They actually came around to discovering meaning. And the therapist comes in. What does that tell you about what you might be missing right now? Client would respond, I don't feel needed as in the same way anymore that I used to when my kids were at home. This is the work. You're not assigning meaning. You're not telling them what meaning is. You're helping the client discover it for for themselves. So here comes the therapist again. What might it look like to reconnect with that sense of being needed in your life now? And this is what you're being tested on. When you see logotherapy in a question, the right answer is usually one that explores meaning, reflects existential concerns, or connects the client to purpose, not the one that jumps straight to the behavior or the cognition or solving the problem. Because sometimes the issue isn't what the client is doing, it's that they've lost why they're doing it. Okay, let's get into some questions. Question number 1. According to Viktor Frankl, the primary human motivation is the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of power, the search for meaning, or the reduction of anxiety. Correct answer is C, the search for meaning. The first one's Freud, right? Freud, pleasure principles. Next up, Adler, always going for superiority and power. And D is more of a kind of like a behavioral clinical focus. So tip here is Frankl equals meaning. Always. He's always about meaning, finding meaning in life. Question number 2. A client reports feeling bored, directionless, and lacking purpose in life. According to logotherapy, this best described as cognitive distortion, A, B, existential vacuum, C, learned helplessness, or D, ego dystonia. Correct answer is B. Existential vacuum equals emptiness. I mean, exactly how it sounds, right? A vacuum, emptiness, lack of meaning. Not an error, not like a thinking error like A was kind of talking about, or not helplessness like C was talking about. Nothing else matters, nothing matters, existential vacuum. Reminds me of that Metallica song. Question number 3. Which of the following interventions is most consistent with logotherapy? Is it A, challenging irrational beliefs, B, exploring the client's source of meaning and purpose, C, developing a behavioral activation plan, or D, teaching relaxation techniques? Answer is going to be B. You know, one of the books that I'm sure everybody has either heard of or read that's in this field is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Just that title, it wraps up everything that you're going to see on the test related to logotherapy and Frankl. It's meaning, and that tends to be what I constantly am thinking about. What I constantly was thinking about on the test. Question number 4. Which technique involves encouraging a client to intentionally engage in a feared behavior? Is it A, systematic desensitization, B, cognitive restructuring, C, paradoxical intention, or D, exposure therapy? Correct answer is C, paradoxical intention. Client is encouraged to do or wish for the feared behavior, reducing anxiety by breaking the cycle. This is one of those techniques that is worth really understanding and getting down and having in your toolbox. This is something I use on a regular basis with people, especially. I use a lot of logotherapy when I'm doing grief work with individuals, helping people rediscover meaning in their lives. Let's say it's a big one. Question number 5. A therapist helps a client shift focus away from excessive self-monitoring and toward meaningful engagement with others. This is an example of reflection, A, B, dereflection, C, projection, or D, transference. Answer is dereflection. Redirecting attention away from the self reduces overthinking and performance anxiety. Question number 6. Which of the following best reflects Frankl's concepts of freedom of attitude? Individuals can eliminate suffering through cognitive change. Individuals can control all external circumstances. Individuals can choose their responses even when the circumstances cannot be changed. Or individuals should avoid difficult emotional experiences. Correct answer is C. Right? The individual can choose their response even when circumstances cannot be changed. All right, folks, that is going to be it for the episode today. Let's bring things together. Today, we talked about Viktor Frankl and logotherapy, not just as a theory, but as a way of understanding what drives people forward, especially when things are difficult. We looked at the idea that meaning and not pleasure or power is the primary human drive. We looked at how existential vacuum shows up as emptiness or lack of direction, and how meaning can be found through work, relationships, and even our attitudes towards suffering. We also talked about how this shows up not just on the exam, but in real conversations with clients in that dialogue section. Because at some point in your work, you're going to sit across from someone who isn't just struggling with what they're doing, they're struggling with why they are doing anything at all. And that's not just something you fix with techniques. That's something that you really explore with them and get into. And yes, this is something you'll see on your exam. But more importantly, this is part of becoming a clinician, learning how to sit with someone in that space and help them reconnect with something that matters. All right. Again, just a little reminder, the Licensure Lifeline Circle group is going to be coming up. This is the kind of space where you're going to be able to go deeper into some of these topics. And it'll take these ideas and turn them into something that you can actually practice through case studies and breakdowns. I'm going to have quizzes and things like that as well within the group that you'll be able to take. And again, if you're not already on it, please take a look at the newsletter. The link will be in the show notes. And that's something I'll be sending out each week, and it's going to complement the episodes. Final thought here, Frankl believed that even when everything is taken from a person, one thing remains, the ability to choose how we respond. And when you think about that in your work, that's not just a theory, that's a responsibility. And as always, never stop learning. Take care.